Welcome back to my channel for another Leica episode, and this video is about the resolution of my Leica SL2-S reporter. And the Leica SL2-S has quote-unquote only 24 megapixel compared to the SL2, which has 47 megapixel. And sometimes I get the question, is 24 megapixel really enough for a modern digital camera? Is that question justified? Yes, absolutely. Because most modern digital cameras today have around 50 megapixel on the sensor. Some have even 100 megapixel like the GFX 100S from Fuji, for instance, or the new Hasselblad X2D. And on the very top segment of cameras, on phase 1 on the IQ4, it goes up to 150 megapixel. So is 24 megapixel enough to take good photos? Yes, it is, because the photo is made by the photographer. That's the first statement I have on this question. The second statement I want to make is 24 megapixel is still plenty of space in terms of resolution when you want to print an image in large dimensions. Third, the Leica SL2-S is more drilled for speed than the Leica SL2, and I feel it when I look into focus tracking, I feel it when I shoot sports and action, I feel it when I use the camera in the video mode. So 24 megapixel is actually better if you want to have fast action and fast moving subjects and want to capture them with your camera in still images or want to shoot them in video. But what if you want to have more megapixel on the Leica SL2-S and the native resolution of the sensor is only 24? There are two ways how you can boost up resolution on Leica SL2-S footage. First of all, you can go for the Multishot option. I will show this again in a moment, but I showed it before on my channel. I will keep this very short, just a couple of minutes on comments. And second, you could go for software. And the software I'm looking into in this video is GigaPixel AI from Topaz. It's a software which caught my attention some time back and a lot of people talked about it, so I wanted to try it out. I purchased it with my own money. I'm not paid by Topaz, so whatever you hear in the course of the video from me about that GigaPixel AI software is my own independent opinion. The game plan for this video is simple. First, I will show you an image which I shot in New York City through a window at an upper floor. And I did shoot the scene twice. Once in the native 24 megapixel resolution of the SL2-S sensor and once in the Multishot mode, which gave me a 96 megapixel image out of camera. Next, I will upload the 24 megapixel image into GigaPixel AI from Topaz, show you how to scale it up to achieve 96 megapixel, which is the same resolution as what we have on the Multishot. And then we are going to compare the two images, the Multishot versus the GigaPixel AI 96 megapixel image. Based on our observations on these two images and the comparison of two 96 megapixel images coming from totally different technologies, I will explain you the advantages and disadvantages of these two methodologies and what you should use in what situation. And now let's kick off the video. Alright, let's quickly refresh our mind what the Multishot mode is on the Leica SL2-S. This will happen in a couple of minutes because I've explained this in detail in other videos on my channel. You can access the Multishot mode under drive mode here in the status screen. You swipe all the way to the right hand side and then it's right here. It has a warning if there is a shake. So if I move the camera a little bit, let's go into live mode. It says immediately vibration detected. Please use a stable base for Multishot. I have it now placed here on a tabletop tripod, so all good. You can also access the Multishot mode in the menu under drive mode, and then you also get a couple of options to choose from. So it's at the very bottom of drive mode. You swipe here to the right hand side, you get a self timer to choose between off, 2 seconds, 12 seconds, and you can also switch on or off motion artifacts correction, which is a fantastic way to deal with moving subjects in the scene if you take so many frames in consecutive ways in the Multishot mode. I have taken thousands of images with my Leica SL2 and a lot of images with the SL2-S, not as many as with the SL2 because the SL2 was in our studio much earlier, but I enjoyed the SL2-S in the last weeks a lot and did shoot with it. In all these shootings, I never experienced any issue, error or flaw with the Multishot mode on the Leica SL2-S or the Leica SL2. And that's cool, of course, because a lot of cameras offer these type of options, but not always it's working in the way you want it to work. Here on the SL2 and the SL2-S, you can fully rely on it. The Multishot technology itself relies on pixel shift. in the same way as on many other camera brands, and it creates a sequence of shots. And the good thing is, on the Leica SL2 and SL2S, it stacks these images together automatically in camera. So you don't need software on your computer like you use it for Fuji GFX, for instance, or the Fuji X series or the Sony A7 series cameras. The camera is doing the trick and the job for you in the camera body by the software implemented in the firmware, so you don't have to do anything on your computer to get these frames stacked to a 96 megapixel resolution image. So all in, Multishot on the SL2S and the SL2 works in terrific ways, is a very useful tool to get higher resolution images. But there are two main restrictions. The first one I showed already. If I have tiny little vibrations, the camera will refuse to fire. Nothing happens here if I press the shutter button. We have to wait until it is steady on the tripod, and then after a while, that message will go away when the camera has come down, and now I can shoot via the tripod. That's the first restriction. You cannot shoot handhold with the multi-shot method. In contrast, for instance, to OM series cameras from Olympus, where you by now can also do it handhold. The second restriction is on the shutter speed side. So if I go into the menu here, let's go from aperture priority into fully manual mode. And let's say we have an ISO here. Let's get this to, I don't know, down here to, what do we want to have here? Let's say 400. And let's go into the menu and let's choose the shutter speed. I can now make my shutter speed slower, but it will stop at 1 second. You see this here live. At 1 second, that's end of story. Now for the image I was shooting through the window in Manhattan, 1 second would not have been my choice. I would have rather shot this with, let's say, 20-25 seconds and a lower ISO than what you see in a moment when I show you the parameters of my image. But in a multi-shot mode, it's not possible to have longer exposures than 1 second, and that's the second restriction we have on multi-shot. So the first one is you cannot shoot handhold. The second one is you cannot shoot longer than 1 second exposures. Of course, if I want to upscale a 24 megapixel native image coming out of this camera, I don't have these restrictions any longer. So if I switch here, let's go back to drive mode. Let's go here from multi-shot to single shooting, for instance, or continuous shooting, what have you. Then I don't have any restrictions. I can go up in any way I want on my shutter speed. We have here plenty of reserves. You see that I can go for very long exposures, what have you, and there is no problem. I can also shoot handhold, of course, if I just make sure that my camera, first of all, has in-body image stabilization activated, and second, I have a shutter speed fast enough to shoot handhold. I can easily shoot handhold. I don't have to have the camera on a tripod. If I shoot for 24 megapixel in the native resolution, that means whatever I shoot on that camera can actually be upscaled by GigaPixel AI, and I don't have any restrictions as we have them in the Multishot. The question is, how good is this upscaling procedure from GigaPixel AI, and how well can it replicate the image quality we get from a multi-shot resolution? And that is what I'm going to try out now in the next few minutes. So follow me when I go into Lightroom and compare these images and provide further comments. So in Lightroom now, on the left hand side I have the standard 24 megapixel resolution, and on the right hand side I have the multi-shot resolution, which is about 96 megapixel. But here I did some perspective correction and also cropped a little bit in, which I, by the way, did on both images on both sides, so they are comparable. Let's focus on the 24 megapixel standard resolution image on the left hand side first. So if I crop in here to 100%, it's a very clean, very clear, very crisp, and by the way, very sharp image. We see tiny little cars here on the street. The buildings are nicely rendered here. The colors are nicely rendered. As I said, I was there in January last time, so we have some Christmas tree here with decoration. Like always in New York, it's always nice to be there around in December and in January. And we have a very nice image. If I crop into a different part of the image, like here for instance, you can nicely see through the windows into the office buildings. And again, I repeat myself, you see a lot of details and the image is nicely rendered. Let's do the same now on the right hand side, and since we have here 4 times the resolution, if I crop in by 100%, magnification will be much larger. So let's do this here. You see here on St. Patrick Cathedral a lot of details, nicely rendered, and if you look here for instance at these carve outs in the towers, very nice. You see that Christmas tree here, a little bit overblown in terms of highlights, of course, that's the nature of these type of images. If we surf through that image a little bit, we catch so much detail. It's a very nice image, and as I said before, the multi-shot option on the Leica SL2 works like a charm. If I crop into the more shadow areas like here on that building, you still see in the multi-shot image here a lot of details on the rooftop terrace here with these ceilings, with the bushes or plants or whatever that is, a tree here. Looks quite nice. It gets a bit noisy, but is absolutely bearable, so the noise is not distracting or disturbing it also. This image really looks very nice. Let's look into the office buildings again. Now you get much more details here, of course. Let's compare it to the left-hand side in 100% crop. Here you see much more what's going on inside the buildings, and that's very nice, of course, as we are close to 96 megapixel here. So all in good results. What I'm going to do now is I will load the left-hand side image, the 24 megapixel image, into GigaPixel AI. We'll scale it up to about the same resolution of what we have here on the right hand side in the Multishot, and then we compare the Multishot with the GigaPixel AI upscaled standard resolution. There's one remark or caveat I want to make before we go into GigaPixel AI, and that's the following. GigaPixel AI is software, and that means it can only work with information it finds in the source image. And there's one part in the image I want to quickly show. If we go to the right hand side to the Multishot image, and we look into that building here, which has another smaller building on top, you see a little bit of structure here on that building. That is not visible and recognizable in the standard resolution. And one thing is clear, if GigaPixel AI does not find information in the source image, it will not be in the upscaled image. And that's something we'll observe in a moment when we compare the Multishot with the GigaPixel AI upscaled image. So this is how GigaPixel AI looks like. I'm here currently on version 6.3.3. But they are permanently updating the software. They are also updating the underlying artificial intelligence models, which you have downloaded to your computer to work effectively with the program. We have here an indication on the lower left-hand side that this is a 24 megapixel standard image. We have here the resolution of 24 megapixel. We have here the upscaled resolution, and currently I have a scaling factor of 2.0 here. And I can change that in that section of the program. I can go to half scaling up, 2 times scaling up, 4 times, 6 times, or I go to a customized field here. And there is a bunch of options we can tweak here. So for instance, the model can be the standard model. You will see in a moment how it says here updated. It also gives you an information. What that means, we have a lines model here, which is also nice. You always get the screen showing you what it is. Lines is probably a model which works quite well on New York City here. And we have art here. We also have high quality, lower resolution, very compressed, and you always get this little help screen here, which gives you some information. I'm going to disable this now because I know the software by now and it's distracting me and it's distracting you. So that's the way it works. And let's go for the standard model first. And that works. If you see here, if we move around with that rectangle, you see now much more details, and just by looking at it, it's amazing how nicely this is rendered. And I'm super surprised about that software, but we'll go into more details in a moment. Let's choose another model. Let's go for lines here. And I think lines works even better for that type of image I have here, so we keep that. Then we can suppress noise. I go here for the standard automatic settings, remove some blur, and so on and so on. Let's look into the shadow parts of the building. And here you see clearly more noise kicking in than what we had on the Multishot image, but it still looks very well. And we have here the ceilings on the rooftop. We have that tree which I showed before and the bushes here, the plants. It's a lot of detail we get in this upscaled image. Now this clearly is a nightscape image of New York City, so we don't have faces in that image. But here's another section, and if you go to the help screen here, it says face recovery. The artificial intelligence will attempt to detect and recover human faces, works best on blurry, low resolution or artifacted faces, and so on and so on. So there are also more options we can tweak here. I deactivate this because I don't think we need this on the cityscape here. So if we look into that, it looks really good. If we look down the street here, we have now a much bigger representation of that tree. It looks almost identical to the Multishot version, but we'll have a look in a moment and compare them side by side. We have these tiny little cars here on the street that looks very well. And if I go to that part of the building I showed before, there is even a little bit of structure now here on that smaller building on top of the large building, but it is not as elevated, of course, as what we had on the Multishot version. Let's quickly look into these office buildings, because that's always nice to sneak in. And you see here again, a lot of detail. By the way, it always takes a moment to update. If you look here, there is a model progress bar, and now it says updated. If I now move that rectangle in the upper right hand side, but you should focus on the lower left hand side to see that progress bar, it will quickly calculate and update the scene and render it newly. Have a look here. See, now it's red, now it's updating, it's updated. So it works very quick on my computer. If you have a slower machine, of course, it will take longer. But staying here with these office buildings and looking through the windows, this looks really, really good. I'll now go to the lower right hand side corner where we have a button which says Save Image. If I push that, we get another window with parameters. So we can go here in the image format, for instance, for JPEG, for TIFF, PNG, digital negative, which is a RAW format, and so on. On quality, I want to have the highest setting, and it switches here to maximum. The file name, that's all fine. Color profile, we can go here to sRGB, Adobe RGB, what have you. Maybe we go to Adobe RGB here, because that's a slightly larger gamut. Then we have here Save Directory, but I will save the image in the same directory or folder where the original image is sitting. So I go to Save, and then we get the progress bar. This will take a moment on my computer, it's very quick. And then the image is saved. Back in Lightroom, we have now 3 images. We have here the 24 megapixel standard image. We have here the 96 megapixel multishot image. And we have here now the 96 megapixel GigaPixel AI image. Let's now take the 96 megapixel multishot image and the GigaPixel image, and let's put them side by side for a fair comparison. And you see the resolution is exactly the same, almost exactly the same. We have 11.128K on the width here on both images, and on the height we have on the left hand side 7419 and on the right hand side 7418. So this is really comparable. They also look kind of the same, and let's now crop in to see if we can spot any differences. Let's go to the streets first, and let's see what we get here. So tiny little cars here. That looks exactly the same. There is no difference I can recognize or spot here. It looks really, really good. If we go to the office building, which is one of my favorite places in this image here, that looks also exactly the same. There is a higher level of noise in the GigaPixel AI image. You can see this also when you go to the more dark areas of the frame. So here, and I think it's visible in particular here on the left hand side of the building, that you have more noise in GigaPixel AI than what you have in Multishot. And that is clearly coming from the upscaling. It's an effect we cannot avoid. We could hex it away in post to some extent, which I'm going to do in a moment. Let's see what I can correct. But it looks in general quite similar, except of the level of noise. Let's look here into the other buildings. Really good, looks very well. I like a lot the details we have here. The windows are clearly rendered, always a bit more noise on the right hand side on the GigaPixel AI image, but in general a really good result. Let's go to the center of the frame, looks really good. Highlights look even a little bit better, I think, on the GigaPixel AI image, but that's probably something we can correct on one or the other image in post. Let's look at this tiny little building on top of the larger building, and here you see what I mentioned before. We have more structure on the left hand side on the Multishot than what we have on the GigaPixel AI image, and that's because that information was already almost lost in the source image, which we processed through GigaPixel AI. Let's look a bit into the corners here. That looks really good on both sides. Nicely rendered, lots of details, more noise if you look into the windows of this building here, again in the GigaPixel AI image. Let me see if I can correct this in post a little bit. So let's go here into the library. Let's pick the GigaPixel AI image. Let's go into develop, and then let's apply a mask. So let's go to sky and let's invert that mask. And let's see if I apply the noise slider here, if that noise is a little bit mitigated. Let me try to do this. All right, let's go out here. Let's go back into the library. And in the library, let's pick both images again, Multishot, GigaPixel AI. Let's put them side by side. Let's see if we could control this a bit in post here. So let's go back to the windows of these buildings. I think it looks a little bit better now. Let's go to the dark areas of the frame. Yes, this looks better now. I think the noise is a little bit mitigated. It's not completely gone away, but it is much less elevated than what we had before. But you see also here on the bushes on that rooftop terrace that the multi-shot image indeed is better. Nevertheless, what we got here just by scaling up via software is absolutely amazing. And I think this is a good opportunity in a moment to wrap up and summarize what we can gain here and when we should go for multi-shot and when we should go for GigaPixel AI. But in general, a really good result. I like a lot what I'm seeing. Let's look at the street here. Here also the noise level is not so much elevated. We get all these details, the cars here, the highlights, it looks good. Let's look at the Christmas tree. That's another place I wanted to look into. Let's see where it is. I can't find it, must be here somewhere. Here it is. Look at the Christmas tree. This is pretty much comparable, and also that building next to the Christmas tree, really good in terms of details, noise level now better controlled, and I think we have a good instrument here at hand to make 24 megapixel turning into 96 megapixel just via software. Let me quickly summarize the observations and what we found in this video. First of all, the multi-shot on the Leica SL2-S, in the way I showed it in the course of the video, is slightly better when it comes to 96 megapixel resolution than what you get if you scale up a 24 megapixel native image to 96 megapixel by GigaPixel AI. But the result from GigaPixel AI was astonishingly good. And you saw that when I compared to images. Now, on GigaPixel AI, you have all the flex in the world. You don't need to have your camera on a tripod. You can do handhold shooting. You can go up, if you have it on a tripod, to shutter speeds which are as long as whatever the camera is allowing for in the single shooting mode or continuous shooting mode. You don't have any issue with motion artifacts, of course, but you know, the final image will not be as precisely well done as if you shoot in multi-shot option on the camera itself. Having said that, I was surprised when I saw the result coming out of GigaPixel AI, and that clearly opens a whole new world, because you get the fast 24 megapixel processing of images on this SL2S, faster as I said compared to the Leica SL2, but if you need higher resolution, in most of the cases it will be good enough if you go for GigaPixel AI, and if you can live with a 1 second exposure and you can live with the fact that your camera needs to rest on a tripod, you even have the multi-shot option at hand. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel, there's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.